Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about common sounds. Let's admit that we live in a loud world. This is a world where you can't really go through your day without hearing things all the time. I even hear things when I don't want to hear things. Earlier, I gave the example of I was in the middle of taking a nap when a dog started barking. Those are the kinds of sounds I'm going to talk about today. The sounds of car horns, the sounds of dogs barking, and those kinds of things. I will try to do some sound effects along the way, but mostly I will just talk about the sound, the name of the sound, the word we use to talk about that sound, and then as well the phrase we use to refer to that sound, the most common way we talk about that sound in English. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about common sounds. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll learn some new words and phrases. A phone ringing. So this is probably a very common sound. I think that this was a sound you only heard at home many years ago, but now you might hear this anywhere, and you'll hear a number of different ringtones. So people set their phone to make a different sound when it rings. But if I was to say, oh, I was walking through the mall and all of the sudden I heard a phone ringing, or a phone started to ring, those would be the phrases we would use to talk about that. It's not very nice when you hear a phone ringing in a movie theater. That's my least favorite place. I also don't enjoy hearing a phone ringing if I'm on a walk in the park when I'm trying to relax. It's a very annoying sound. But probably one of the most common sounds that you might hear right now is the sound of a phone ringing. Water running. This is my least favorite sound. This means someone didn't turn off the tap. This means someone brushed their teeth and they just left the water running, and I hear the sound of water running. Oh, I haven't made any sound effects yet, have I? The sound of water running is like, that's not a very good impression of water running, but I think you get the point. I don't like to waste water. Water isn't free for me. Well, it sort of is because it comes from the sky, like rainwater goes in our cistern. But my biggest worry is when someone flushes a toilet and the toilet is running through. That means it hasn't closed and filled the tank again. And that's not a nice sound because you hear water running and you're like, what is that? Oh, it's the toilet running through. Go stop it. If I left the water running for a whole day, we would empty our cistern. Not quite. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but that could happen. A knock at the door. This is actually something I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy hearing a knock at the door when I'm doing something. I don't mind when people come over. I do like it when people call first. I like to hear my phone ring and then hear someone say, hey, can I pop by in a sec? I want to drop off something. And then later hear a knock at the door. Notice the phrasing on this. So you might say, oh, I heard a person knocking at the door, but this is definitely how I would say it. I heard a knock at the door. I was having a nap and then I heard a knock at the door. It was the mailman with a package for me. So a knock at the door, obviously I don't have to make the sound. We all know what it sounds like. And you could probably all do it right now. In fact, if you want to remember the word, you say a knock at the door and make a knocking sound. A toilet being flushed. This is my least favorite sound when I am sleeping at night. Sometimes when I'm sleeping at night, I will hear someone use the washroom and then I will hear a toilet being flushed. You could in English say, I heard the flushing of a toilet, but that's not a very common way to say it. Some of these sounds I will say one way and other phrases go the other way. And I actually don't know why, but this is the common thing to say. Oh, I heard a toilet being flushed in the middle of the night. Who was up in the night flushing the toilet? And what does that sound like? It's like, that's the sound of a toilet being flushed. Hopefully that sound effect came through better than how it sounded in my ears. An alarm clock going off. So I don't have this style of alarm clock that goes ring. I have the style of alarm clock that goes beep, 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 beep. It's a really annoying sound. In fact, I actually prefer to wake up on my own. I prefer to just wake up because it's light outside and because I've had enough sleep. I don't actually enjoy hearing an alarm clock going off. So at night, you set your alarm. In the morning, your alarm clock will go off. That's the phrase we use in English to talk about the sound that an alarm clock makes. I did not get up this early this morning. I got up at 6:30, and right now it's 7:37. So I've been up for a little over an hour. I heard my alarm clock going off at 6:30. I did hit snooze once. And then I did get up. So I guess technically I got up at 6:37. A door closing, a door being slammed. Slight difference here. When you hear a door close, it just goes. So it's just a slight sound if you don't have the hinges oiled. And then you just hear a little click at the end. A door being slammed, though, sounds like probably even louder than that. People normally just close doors. So you would hear a door closing because someone wanted the door closed and they moved it until it was shut. But sometimes people are angry. I was happy that I was able to find a graphic that shows this. Sometimes people are angry and they slam the door. They use a lot of strength and they kind of take out their anger on the door. And then it's just like, the door just slams super hard and makes a really, really loud noise. I like to close my doors. If you were to be in the same building as me, you would hear a door closing when I close the door. You would not hear a door being slammed. Certainly not. Besides, it kind of wrecks the door a little bit if you do that. A doorbell ringing. So you can hear a knock at the door. You can also hear a doorbell ringing, or the doorbell ringing. So I would say something like this. I was washing the dishes and then I heard the doorbell ringing and it was the food delivery service with the food. This actually never happens here because no one delivers food this far out in the country. But when you hear a doorbell ringing, you go and you answer the door. And a doorbell is usually like the typical ding dong. Like it's the typical one chime and then another here. Like I actually don't have a doorbell right now. When our doorbell was working, it would be like ding dong. That would be the sound we would hear if someone was ringing our doorbell. And often when I would hear the doorbell ring, it would be someone delivering something. That was probably the most common situation when I would hear that. A smoke alarm going off. Jen and I woke up once to a smoke alarm going off, and it was not a nice thing. Because when a smoke alarm goes off, when you hear it, it's so loud. It's a very loud, shrill sound. It's louder than an alarm clock. So it's like beep, 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 beep. It's an intense sound. It's shrill, and it definitely wakes you up. We woke up once to the smoke alarm going off, and it took us an hour to make sure there wasn't a fire in the house. So it's not just the fact that it wakes you up. It's the fact that you have to get your children out of the house and you have to find out if there is a fire. There was no fire. We don't know why it went off. We think it was just acting strangely. We have a fire alarm or a smoke alarm on every floor of our house, and we had an extra one. So we brought the extra one into the same area and it didn't go off. So we think the old smoke alarm went off simply because it was old. No fire. The house is still standing. It's hard to get back to sleep after you hear a smoke alarm go off. And by the way, I use smoke alarm, fire alarm. We kind of have two names. I think there's a third name. Smoke detector. Yeah, that's another name for it. The whir of a fan. There's a fan running right here, but you can't hear it. But the whir of a fan would be like, it's a very constant sound. In English, we sometimes refer to it as white noise because it doesn't go up or down. It's just kind of like a background sound. Sorry, I just wanted to hear it. So the whir of a fan. When you turn a fan on, it starts to make a slight sound, and it basically, it's not an annoying sound. In fact, I have a fan running in my room when I sleep. Having a fan running helps me sleep at night. I think because the fan noise is somewhat pleasant and it can block out other noises. So instead of hearing someone flush the toilet or hearing someone downstairs in the kitchen, I just hear the sound of the fan. And I think I said white noise. White noise is simply a constant noise that isn't annoying, kind of like a background noise. So the whir of a fan. A car honking. I can't do a car honking, but it's like honk, honk. That. Okay, that's my worst one yet. But a car honking is annoying. You could say you heard a person honking the horn. You could say you heard a car honking. You could say you heard the honk of a car, but that sounds really cumbersome. We wouldn't say it that way. Like if I was writing a story, I might write, I was walking down the street and I heard the honk of a car. It sounds it's not informal enough. Does that make sense? So what I would say is, I was downtown today and I just heard a car honking nonstop. I don't know what was wrong. This guy was just laying on the horn and I just heard a car honking the whole time I was shopping at the store. So a car honking. Not a pleasant sound unless it's like a short, like beep beep. So there's a difference between which means I'm annoyed with you, and beep beep, which means hi. So I will sometimes when I drive by a neighbor's house, I will do the beep beep and then wave. Sometimes when someone cuts me off in traffic, I'll do the beep, like I'll lay on the horn. I don't know, did I use that phrase yet? You can lay on the horn and honk it to show that you are angry. A clock ticking. So this is less common now. I do remember as a child when I visited my grandparents. Every summer I would visit my grandparents and sleep over for a few days. And they had a really loud clock. And when I was trying to sleep, I would just hear. And it drove me crazy because in my house, there was no clock close to my bedroom that I could hear. Today, in today's day and age, most people have digital clocks, or they just have their phone, or they have their Fitbit or Apple Watch. So this type of clock, the kind of clock that ticks, has become a little more rare. You don't see them as often. But I used to have one in my classroom, and if you stood underneath it, you could just hear. And by the way, the sound is called, you can hear it like the tick-tock of a clock. Because usually it's like, it's two slightly different sounds. Is it though? Yeah, I think it is. I can't remember. I'll have to find an old clock later today and listen to it. A bird chirping. So I can't do a very good bird chirping, but it'd be like, that's not a bird chirping, is it? Maybe the whistle is a better thing. I don't know what kind of bird that is. That's the Bob the Canadian bird. This can be a pleasant sound if you want to wake up in the morning and your window is open. It can be an unpleasant sound if you want to sleep in and your window is open in the morning. Here, Jen and I hear birds starting to chirp around 5:30 a.m. It's usually about when the sun is starting to get come up. When it's starting to get light out, we start to hear birds chirping. I find the sound of a bird chirping quite pleasant. I do enjoy it. Some people, as I mentioned, might not if they're trying to sleep, but it certainly is nice. So I can do like a mourning dove, like that wouldn't really be a chirp. That's more of a coo, like we have a bird called a mourning dove. It's like smaller than a pigeon, and it's not white like a regular dove. It's grayish brown, and that's the sound it makes. Footsteps on the floor. Have you ever lived in an apartment building? Some of you probably do live in apartment buildings. And sometimes you have a neighbor who lives above you who walks around and they have very heavy feet. It's like, and you just don't know, what is this guy going to walk around all day? I keep hearing footsteps on the floor above me. Not nice. Sometimes when I'm watching a baseball game in the room downstairs, the kids will be walking around upstairs and I'll hear footsteps on the floor and I'll say, hey, quiet down. I'm trying to watch the Blue Jays game. Stop slamming the door and stop running around. I keep hearing your footsteps on the floor. I'm happy that I don't live in an apartment building now. I have in the past lived in dormitories at university, and I have lived in a multi-story house where my room was on the second floor when I lived in Quebec City. And thankfully, I didn't hear my roommate above me very often. They weren't very loud. I didn't hear footsteps on the floor very often. A chair creaking. Is this the day my chair doesn't creak? Yeah, a couple weeks ago, the chair was creaking. Oh, there it goes. Hopefully that sound comes through on the video. We'll have to see. Oh yeah, you can kind of hear the chair creaking a little bit, but yes, old chairs, especially chairs that rotate and recline. Oh, that was a good creak. Can make a creaking sound. A creaking sound is like, it's like metal on metal, right? You hear kind of this little creak. Wood can also creak. It's a slightly different sound. I can't duplicate the sound, but yes, chairs can creak. Other things can creak as well, but I know I was teaching in a classroom last year with older desks, and the desks would actually creak if students moved a certain way. It was very distracting. It was not an enjoyable way to teach at all. But a chair creaking, that is a sound you might hear. A timer going off, similar to an alarm clock going off. Maybe you put some cookies in the oven and then 8 minutes later you just hear beep, 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 beep. A timer is something that you set. So you set the timer for 8 minutes, you hit start, you put your cookies in. Usually you put your cookies in first and then you set the timer. And then 8 minutes later you hear beep, 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 beep. Again, a very insistent sound, a repetitive sound, usually a high-pitched sound so that it travels and you can hear it, so that if you get distracted, you don't forget, because you don't want to burn the cookies. Should I do a lesson on common smells? Maybe I should do that next. The smell of cookies baking. Is that a common smell in your house or apartment? That would be a very fun thing to smell. But a timer going off. Beep, 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 beep. A car running. So you could say you hear an engine running. You could say that you hear a car running or a truck running. We don't often, you could say you hear an engine running. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, I was sitting in my classroom and I heard a car running outside the window. Yeah, I would definitely say car. I hear a car running. When you put the key in a car or when you push the start button, the engine turns over and then eventually you have the sound of an engine. So you hear a car running. Exhaust comes out the exhaust pipe, and then hopefully the person eventually drives away. When it's really hot, when you go to a mall or store, there's often vehicles in the parking lot and you can hear that people have left their car running because sometimes someone's sitting in the car still. So sometimes a husband will drop off a wife and the husband will sit in the car with the car running in order to keep the air conditioning working. And I think what's more common is parents sitting in their car with the car running, waiting for their teenager to be done work or to be done whatever they are doing. A dog barking. Again, this can be a good thing. If a stranger comes to your house, You might hear a dog barking. It might be your dog barking because they don't like the stranger and they want to stop them from coming into your house. But sometimes you're just trying to enjoy a quiet moment. Sometimes I'm trying to take a nap. And then because I hear someone driving in, I will also hear a dog barking, one of my dogs barking. They bark quite a bit. And it's like, this is Walter. He's like, "Arrrr, arrrr." He has like this really loud bark, which wakes me up. Oscar is a lot more like, "Ah, ah, ah." Like it's like a sharp bark, but Walter is definitely like, he sounds like a hound dog almost sometimes. But the sound of a dog barking, annoying if you're trying to sleep, good if you're trying to keep strangers off your property or from coming into your apartment. Someone driving in. So when you live in a house and if someone is coming over, you will sometimes listen because you want to hear if they are driving in. When you hear someone driving in, you hear their tires kind of like they go across the stones in your driveway or even on pavement. When we order something from Amazon, then the next day we listen for someone driving in. We listen for the sound of someone driving in because then we know that our package has arrived. A mouse scurrying. So that's the sound like this. Let me do it on the mic. Let me see if that actually worked. So it's very, I'm just listening. Yeah, I don't know if I can quite capture it. I'll do it extra loud. So the sound of a mouse scurrying is not a nice sound. It means you have a mouse in your house. To use a little bit of a rhyme. Sometimes in the fall, we will hear a mouse scurrying across our kitchen floor from another room because in the fall, that's when mice try to get into the house. So we set mouse traps because we don't like mice in the house. But the sound of a mouse scurrying is the sound of the mouse like running across your floor. It's a very quiet sound. It's very hard to hear, and it's never a nice sound to hear a mouse scurrying across the floor. Never nice. A mouse clicking, on the other hand, is this sound. Can't even see my finger move, can you? When my son plays video games, you hear a mouse clicking. You hear it a lot. You don't hear it too much when I'm doing my lessons because I use the keyboard more. So you hear someone typing more often than a mouse clicking. But when you use a mouse, you point at what you want and then you either click or double click the mouse. So you might click or double click the mouse in order to select what you want. This is a common sound when you're teaching a computer class, when you're teaching graphic design, because students will often use a mouse to do graphic design. In a normal computer class, students just use the touchpad. But yes, you might hear a mouse clicking. Someone typing. This is how my head moves when I'm typing. Can you guys hear the typing? Let's see. But yeah, I have a really loud keyboard. Oh yeah, you can hear that. So this computer actually has an old keyboard from one of my sons, which is a mechanical gaming keyboard that they didn't need anymore. So it's quite loud actually, but you might hear the sound of someone typing in another room. Maybe they're sending a message to someone. Maybe they're a student and they're writing a paper for a class and you hear them typing. You hear them using their keyboard to put words onto the screen. A radio blaring. I think the older you get, the more annoying this is. But actually yesterday at market, someone had their radio blaring. When you use the verb blare, to blare, it's louder than you would like. So you might hear a radio playing at the beach, and that might be enjoyable. When you hear a radio blaring at the beach, it means it's probably too loud and you don't like the music. Sometimes young people drive their cars down the street and they have the radio blaring. They have the windows down. Maybe they've installed a really loud radio in their car and they have the radio blaring. So it definitely, you wouldn't say blaring unless you don't like the sound. Like that definitely means you don't like the sound. Oh, my neighbor has their radio blaring all the time. It's so annoying. So basically a radio that is really loud, we would use the word blaring. I'm going to do this sound effect. I don't know if you'll like it. It's not how I chew. I chew with my mouth closed, but sometimes people will take a bite of something and you'll just hear this chewing sound, and it's not a very nice sound. I'm not sure what the custom is in your country. In Canada, the custom is you chew with your mouth closed. That is considered polite. So you take a bite of food, you keep your lips closed, and you chew your food with your mouth closed. But the sound of a person chewing, I know it sometimes takes a while to teach children to chew with their mouth closed. Yeah, I know it drives Jen crazy if one of our kids chews with their mouth open. She doesn't like the sound of chewing. So I forgot to mention this when we were talking about pleasant sounds. I love the sound of rain. This is probably one of the common sounds that I enjoy the most. I like the sound of wind rustling through the leaves of a tree. I like the sound of rain. I like being outside when I can hear one or both of those sounds. The sound of rain is just nice. It's pleasant. It's a little bit like the whir of a fan. It's quite pleasant to listen to, and I quite enjoy it. So the sound of rain. So I love the sound of rain. Maybe I should have put that as the phrase, like, because you could say, I hate the sound of a person chewing. I like the sound of rain.